The views, information, or opinions expressed in this broadcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not represent those of any other persons or entities. Furthermore, some of the activities discussed might be dangerous or illegal. Attempt them at your own risk. Hello everyone, and welcome to another edition of The Peculiar World here on the Paranormal UK radio network. I'm your host, Jeff Davis. This is part 2 of a 2-part broadcast on one of Washington State's most interesting haunts, which is the North Head Lighthouse, located at Cape Disappointment on the north bank of the Columbia River, where it flows into the Pacific Ocean. Over the years, people have reported various paranormal activity in the area. This includes spectral shipwrecks not far from the lighthouse promontory, to a ghostly lighthouse keeper's wife who may have committed suicide standing near the lighthouse where she fell or jumped to her death, to spirits within the keeper's cottage itself, or the duplex where the 2 assistant keepers and their families live. Some of you may have heard of the North Head Lighthouse in October 2018, when the television show Ghost Adventures visited as part of their 4-part series, Graveyard of the Pacific. I was involved in that series as a historian, as well as helping find witnesses to some of the hauntings in and around the mouth of the Columbia River. For those of you who do not know the background of the television show Ghost Adventures, the show airs on the cable network The Travel Channel in the United States. The show was produced and was conceived by Zach Bagans when he was a film student. I am stealing a little bit about the show from a Wikipedia article. The program follows ghost hunters Zach Bagans, Nick Groff until season 10, and Aaron Goodwin as they investigate locations that are reported to be haunted. The show is introduced and narrated by Zach. Each episode begins with the crew touring the investigation site with its owners or caretakers. These introductions typically include Zach's voiceovers of the site's history, as well as interviews with people who claim to have witnessed paranormal phenomenon. On the basis of these interviews, the crew places X's with black or gray tape at the sites of some serious alleged paranormal activity. They later return to these spots in order to set up static night vision cameras to try and film it happening. After completing the walkthrough, they will discuss their strategy, then are locked in the location overnight, which they believe will prevent audio contamination and extraneous shadows. They use a variety of equipment, including digital thermometers, electromagnetic field (EMF) meters, handheld digital video cameras, audio recorders, Ovilus device, point-of-view cameras, and infrared night vision cameras in an effort to capture the evidence of ghosts. The members sometimes place objects and shout verbal taunts they believe the ghost might move or respond to. At the end of the episode, they analyze their audio, photographs, and video footage, often with the assistance of alleged paranormal experts, and present anything they feel is unexplained phenomena to the audience. I had to chuckle at the alleged part. Now, I know one of the producers of the show. His name is Jeff Belanger. You can find him at his website, www.ghostvillage.com, because he does more than just research and produce for Ghost Adventures. He and one of the other show staff met me in Astoria in 2017. They told me they were looking for not just one haunted property, but a location with multiple haunts where they could film a miniseries. They promised me they would be back. But then again, I know television and producers and the way things work, so I was kind of hopeful, yet not overly hopeful. Early in 2018, I hosted a paranormal getaway weekend in Astoria with myself, some friends who were also paranormal investigators, and we stayed at a place called the Commodore Hotel and visited other locations. A short while after the getaway, Jeff Belanger contacted me about the Astoria area again. This time I had more contacts and a series of witnesses to recommend because the event just happened. Eventually, Ghost Adventures decided on 4 locations in the Astoria area. One of them was the Cape Disappointment Lighthouse near Ilwaco, Washington. I had never been there as a paranormal investigator, but knew something of the history of the Graveyard of the Pacific. I also recommended my friend, clairvoyant Wendy Stanton Phillips, as a witness consultant. Zach and his crew arrived in Astoria in April 2018 and stayed for several weeks, filming in various locations. The 4 episodes aired every Saturday in October in 2018. Although they filmed the episode about the North Head Lighthouse first, it aired in the middle of the series. Here's a brief bio on Wendy. One of her main contacts is through her website. It's a really long one, all one word, www.ghostsandgirlsparanormal.com. That's right, ghostsandgirlsparanormal.com, all spelled out. Their mission: we believe that everyone should feel safe in their own home. Your home is your sanctuary. When something unseen invades your home and is no longer safe, it becomes a prison, a place filled with fear. We are here to help those who have paranormal activity in their homes, at their worksite, and land. We investigate to determine if there is indeed paranormal activity. If paranormal activity is confirmed, we will inform you of what we find and then discuss options. We are the go-between for those who have crossed into the spirit realm and the living. Sometimes the client decides to coexist with the spirits, and at other times they just want them gone. If we find something negative, we will remove it for everyone's safety. We do not charge for our services. It is the work we do for the Creator. And that involves England as well as the United States. Wendy's biography narrative says that she is a sensitive with mediumistic abilities. Wendy has dealt with spirits her whole life. Now, as a paranormal investigator, case manager, and occult specialist in training, she has been blessed to partner with June Lundgren in helping clients with the removal of spirits as well as negative entities and helping them to understand and deal with other issues that they may be experiencing. Now, June Lundgren was on a different episode of Ghost Adventures. Now that I've given you some background on Ghost Adventures and Wendy Stanton Phillips, I'd like to give you more information about North Head Lighthouse and the Keeper's Cottage. Jeff Belanger, my friend and the producer for Ghost Adventures, contributed some factoids. Now, the Graveyard of the Pacific narrative. It's estimated that 2,000 ships have been lost along the stretch of coast from Oregon to British Columbia, which is effectively Washington and Oregon. For this reason, it's called the Graveyard of the Pacific. North Head Lighthouse, it was completed and lit on May 16, 1898. The North Head Lighthouse consists of brick masonry built atop a sandstone foundation and finished with a cement plaster overlay. 69 steps lead to the lantern room, which is 65 feet from the ground and 194 feet above sea level. As ship traffic increased around the turn of the century, that is, around 1900, so did the frequency of shipwrecks. The narrow beach and rocky coves below North Head Lighthouse became known as Dead Man's Hollow. That name originated in 1853 when a ship called the Vandalia wrecked nearby, killing 9 people. Because of the way the currents worked and the landform, their bodies washed up on the shore in the small inlet by North Head. The first head lighthouse keeper was Alex K. Passonen. He was placed in charge of the lighthouse when it was first put into service and they lit the light. Some people believe that the ghost of Mr. and Mrs. Passonen haunt the keeper's cottage in the vicinity of the lighthouse, which is a short walk away from their cottage. And in 1923, Mrs. Passonen started having what we would consider psychological or mental problems, so he took her to a doctor in Portland, and she was diagnosed with melancholia, a condition marked by persistent depression and ill-founded fears. Shortly after that, he went and picked her up and brought her home. This was in June of 1923. In the following morning, Mary rose early and went for a walk with their dog Jerry. Sometime after that, the dog came back to the keeper's cottage alone, but was acting strangely. Alexander Passonen took the dog and went out to look for his wife. He did not find her, but when he searched the cliff edge near the lighthouse, he saw that the grass had been bent as if someone had slipped or fallen down the cliff to the ocean below. Eventually, they lowered a volunteer, one of the assistant keepers, down the cliff on a rope, and he found Mrs. Passonen's body. They brought her up and buried her in Owalco, Washington. Now, Passonen himself retired 2 years later, and he died shortly after that, and he's buried next to her. Mary had become a member of the Unity movement, known for faith-based healings, a few years before her death. And the night before she slipped down the cliff, she wrote a letter which included the sentences, "I have seen where I have been wrong in a great many ways, but please God, I will try and change and do better. I'm even going to try and do without my medicine and just pray I'll get better and better." And the mystery continues to the present day. Did she fall? Did she jump? Or was she pushed? This is one of the many questions the Ghost Adventures crew asked, along with Wendy Stanton Phillips, my friend, who will talk to us about her experience on the show. I'd like to introduce my friend, Wendy Stanton Phillips. I've already read a brief bio on her, and hopefully everybody who's tuning into this has also tuned into Ghost Adventures, but maybe not. What I hope to get with Wendy is kind of a behind the scenes as well as her own firsthand account about what happened. So, welcome, Wendy.
Well, thank you for having me. It is such an honor to be able to do this with you.
And here's what we go back to, and the honor is all mine, ma'am.
Hey, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have been on that show. Thank you very much.
Well, and it was a pleasure to work with you. From your viewpoint, what exactly happened even before you got on the show?
Oh my goodness. Well, the lead up is at 2 days before the show, a woman that I call my mentor. She was my oldest son's grandmother. She taught me how to be a mother when I was this terrified little person. She passed away. And that was, really rough because I just adored her. But she and I had many, many conversations, and she believed in all of these things. And so I just kind of decided I'm going to open myself up as much as I can, and I'm going to take her with me because she would have loved an experience like that. So I just kind of looked at it like, we're going on this journey together. We're going to enjoy this. So instead of, being bummed, I took one of my best friends with me. And so that just really kind of helped me be able to tune in because, the emotions are there from knowing that you're not going to see this person physically anymore. So I just said, what, let's go. I told my son what I was doing. Of course, he thought I was insane, but he always does. And she just was there. I could feel her. And so we got there, and it was just a very nasty, miserable, rainy day, as you know, because you were down on the beach. So it was a perfect setting for what we had to do, I think.
Yeah, I do remember in the lead up to it. I think your mentor, your friend, she was sick for a couple of days. You kind of knew what was going to happen in advance. Yep. Well, being clairvoyant too.
I actually sat at a table because my birthday had been the 12th and this was the 14th, and my youngest son had been there, and my youngest daughter, and we were all sitting there, and we actually started talking about her because my oldest son, Eric, lives next door and kind of has been there for his grandparents and does whatever he can. And we were talking about the fact that her time was coming very soon, and it was going to be really difficult for him. And a few hours later, I got that phone call.
Even though people, dare I say, in the biz, and by that I mean people who are clairvoyants or are in touch or trying to be in touch with the spirit realm, there is a lot of faith that says this is, not to sound like Star Wars or something else, this is only the beginning. There is a next step. But
oh yeah.
But when the person goes, there's still that sense of loss because the contact is not physical. But that seems to make people like you and others a lot more philosophical and accepting.
And at the same time, sometimes when you have seen a lot of it, it's like at one point in my family, we lost 10 in a matter of 4 months. And you go to funerals and go and go and go and go, or you get the phone calls or the text messages. And if you get to the point, you're like, okay, enough. We almost have no family left. Can we be done with this for a while? You do get to that point also where it's difficult, even though we know what we know, or we view it the way we view it. It still does get tough. We're still human, and we still have that little bit of, but I want to hold your hand. I want to hear your voice. And sometimes we get blessed enough to have them reach out and touch us, get to hear their voice, smell their cologne, what have you. So I was talking with a coworker the other day, and she's like, she believes in these things, and her parents are gone. And she's like, I wish they'd reach out to me. And I said, they probably have. And they're with you all the time. You just don't realize it because you're so used to it. It's been almost 30 years. So sometimes we don't even see it. We're used to it. There they are.
I tend to agree with you. Even though I am as clairvoyant and farsighted as a brick, I still have that kind of belief that there is something beyond. And it's just a matter of, I guess, having patience and waiting for it and or finding the signs.
There's that. Plus, you have had the ability, because of all the different people to go places, to be with people, to see different things that an awful lot of people are leery of going into because, it scares them. The unknown scares all of us in one way or the other. So you may be clairvoyant as a post or a rock, but you still have gotten to be around people and see all these different things. So it kind of gives you a little bit of an edge over maybe the guy next door who's never had that ability. So it's harder for him to grasp it and really want to believe it.
Yeah, that may well be true. Now, interestingly, talking about how close everything is after death, and of course that kind of takes us back around to why we were here, which is to talk about maybe the remnants or the haunted nature over at that North Head Lighthouse.
And there's a lot over there, all different kinds, not just the poor gentleman that is still sitting there. There's many different types of situations going on, and it was really crazy. I'd never spent a lot of time in that area, and it wasn't until I watched the episode and they told the history, I'm like, oh, now that's interesting. I hadn't known that, and yet it was something I had said at one point, well, here's what I'm seeing or hearing or feeling. So it was really cool for them to have put that history up there so I could myself personally go, okay, now that explains what I'm hearing, seeing, and feeling.
All right. So kind of going backward a little bit, even before the day before you decided to go with your friend along with you, how did the contact happen to get you on the show?
I got a phone call from Jeff Belanger, who does so many different things, and he asked if I would be on the show. And it was Friday, and he goes, he's like, I know that it's really short notice and not a problem, it was really cool, and we worked it out. And you, as well as another person who has been involved with all these people, had given my name, and I truly appreciated it, though I was quite surprised. So it was because of word of mouth from the two of you that I ended up being able to do this, and it was a really, really neat experience. And if I could do it again, it was that cool. I would do it all the time because it was really awesome.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed the experience, and I think I may have talked to you at a certain point before everything and giving you what I call the Jerry Springer speech, didn't I?
I'm trying to remember. I don't know if you did. Did you?
I thought I did. When I have more direct contact with people before recommending them for a show like this, I tend to get a hold of them and say, this is a reality TV show, which means some elements are not reality. It's a television production. Mm-hmm. And the director and editor are trying to portray what they think happened, and you as a witness might not agree that that's what happened. It's like a car wreck. Any reality TV show is like a car wreck, really. And so I try and warn people before they go on. You may think you look silly, then again you may not.
Yeah. Oh, I felt like a drowned rat, and I was like, oh my gosh, why did we have to do this today? Forgot my bag. It was just pouring down rain. I'm like, okay, I know I look silly. And you guys are putting me on television. What's wrong with you?
And they had given you instructions different than me about where to show up too, if I recall correctly.
Yes, there was a little bit of a confusion about the time, because the best laid plans of mice and men. Okay, we're going to spend an hour with Jeff while everything on the planet goes wrong. So we ended up having to spend 2 hours with Jeff or what have you. And so it is what it is. So I ended up down at the Lighthouse like you. It's like I get there easily 45 minutes early, especially if I don't know where I'm going. I want to make sure that I'm there. So I was there probably 45 minutes before my go time, and I just kind of wandered around that area there and got a bit of a feeling, as well as almost pneumonia.
Yeah, it was a pretty miserable morning.
It definitely was. It was, but it was really cool. And you're doing a quotes unquote ghost show about a haunted lighthouse. I guess we were not supposed to be standing there in the sunlight.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm laughing. It was very interesting for me too. I've been on the Dead Files several times, but this was the first time that I was on Ghost Adventures, and I always feel a responsibility to people like you and Aaron and Jill, who all of you I had mentioned to the show as contacts, and so I wanted to stick around to make sure you were okay, and we had traded messages by phone. And the other thing too was you could not send me psychic messages because I'm not psychic enough to receive them, and the phone wasn't receiving either. Remember, we had
exactly. I'm like, where are you guys? Where am I? I don't see anything that looks like a camera. Am I in the right place?
Yeah, and so here I was trying to figure out where you were too, and we were trading these messages, and I think we had like one minute phone call before they cut out, and I was talking to the director of that episode. And from my military experience, I find myself channeling the guy in charge. And then I stopped and looked at him and I said, oh my God, I'm sorry. If I'm getting in your space and intruding in what you do, please tell me to stop and I'll go sit off in the corner.
Go to your corner, Jeff. You're in trouble now.
I know. And he kind of...
What was going on?
Say again?
I said, you knew what was going on. You knew I was lost, circling somewhere out there, trying to find somebody who knew something. And luckily, they finally sent me a producer, the sweetest guy on the planet, who found me standing there underneath like the 2-inch overhang trying to not drown.
I was glad for that. And so it worked out, but I was trying to, again, just be a participant in everything that was going on at the same time as not get in the way. And I did get in the way a couple more times.
You were trying to be there and to be of assistance without taking over.
That was my intent, but sometimes no matter how good our intentions, bad things happen. But they were very...
Oh, I think you did great. I wish I had been down there to see that.
I wish you had too, because you missed Zach and I doing the can.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I'm bummed.
Yeah.
That's not fair. I could have gotten that on video and had it for blackmail.
Well, the older I get, the more embarrassment and humiliation I can take with good grace. So
there you go.
It was kind of funny. The weather had just started clearing, and by the time most of us got up to you, the rain had stopped and it started getting sunny. Yeah, we were down there on the beach, and that was going to be the original intro for the 4-part series. Zach and I were on the beach, and we were talking about the nature of the graveyard of ships, and had the cut survived, it would have probably been about a 5-minute explanation.
Yeah.
And then we came in off... Go ahead.
They like this, I asked specifically how much time is on the actual show. And I was told 42 minutes, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh. By the time we were all done, you filmed for a couple of hours. I filmed for like 3-4 hours between everything. I'm like, oh my gosh, that cutting room floor is going to be full. Yeah,
as a matter of fact, when they finished filming at that particular episode, the Yours and Mine Lighthouse episode, talked to the director, and he said, as soon as everything's in the can, they give it to me, and then I fly out and I start working with the editor. And there's another director already waiting to take over for the second episode.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, they had quite a production line going.
Yeah, that's why they had multiple producers and different things like that, which, makes sense. It's not a small thing, as we saw from being there. It's a pretty big thing, and it's dang well organized.
Yeah, they've been doing this for how many years?
They went from small to, but it works well.
Yeah.
It was a well-oiled machine.
It was. Getting back, you were standing under the overhang, and it was still raining, and they sent you your producer. So what happened next?
He came up and introduced himself and told me, here's how I'd like to do it. I'm going to do the first part. I'm going to videotape you on my phone, and we're just going to walk around. And so we started up at the top, and like I said, I had been focusing on trying to find somebody that looked like they were part of the crew, so that they would know, hey, I am here whenever you guys want me, so I'm not paying attention to much else other than that. And so we went back up, because I told him, I said, I'm going to be honest with you. If I don't feel something, I'm going to tell you. I'm not going to play baloney. There's no reason for that. So he understood where I was coming from. He's like, no, that's what we want. And so we started up, and we started walking through the forested area that leads down to it. And it was just a very odd feeling in that area. And he was really kind of funny. His name was Corey, and he was just doing his best. He knew I'd never done this before. And he asked if I had kids, and I said yes. And he said, talk to me like you'd talk to your daughter Heather. And I'm thinking, oh, you don't want that. She's my almost 20-year-old daughter. You don't want that conversation. I'm like, okay, I will try and treat this like I would a conversation between she and I, because she's one of my best friends. So as we're going, he's like, noticing anything? And I told him, there's a lot of heaviness in that particular area. And I explained how I was feeling about it. And he's like, well, what do you think it's from? The lighthouse keeper? And I'm like, oh no, this is a completely different point in time. I said, it feels like Native Americans. And he's like, okay, that's interesting. And again, I had not spent much time in that area. I still, to this day, except for the little blurb from the show when it aired, I don't know much about the history of the area. And you and I need to talk about that sometime, because I'd like to learn more about it. So I just went off what I was feeling. And I told him, I said, I feel like this was a group of Native Americans that lived, I'm not sure when, couple 300-400 years back, whenever it was, I'm not sure. I said, I feel there was a group of them heading down like towards the beach or towards the cliffs. I said, I have this feeling of sadness fear. I'm not exactly sure. I said, I don't know if somebody was going to be reprimanded by meeting the ocean. Was there a plague of some sort going and they felt they needed to do a sacrifice? I said, but something was going on like that. And I felt them going. So we discussed that for a few minutes and we kept going, and we went down to the lighthouse, and they had it arranged so we could go in, which was a really neat honor because the public doesn't get to go in there.
Yeah.
So that was a really cool thing. Did you get to go in?
Well, how about this? Yes and no. This is part of a two-part episode on the North Head Lighthouse and the land around it. And it so happens that a weekend or two ago, we rented the lighthouse keeper's cottage, which I think you know, and stayed there. And I had the request from everybody coming along, because I was the organizer, Jeff, can you get us in the lighthouse itself? So I contacted the state of Washington, and yes, you're right. It's not easy to get in if you're just ordinary civilians.
Yeah.
My Army talk again. Anyway, because it's public land, it is available for commercial visits, such as somebody filming any kind of a commercial video.
Nice.
So that is one of my hints to anybody listening to this one. If you go to the North Head Lighthouse, even British friends on Paranormal UK Radio Network, contact the state of Washington at the park administrative site and say, hey, we want to film inside for a video. It's nominal. It's $150 or $200 for,
oh wow,
whatever time period. I'm guessing it's an hour to 4 hours or something like that. I didn't get into that discussion with them because they told me I could get a permit, except, gosh, Jeff, we're doing rehab on the lighthouse, and so it's shut down right now.
Yeah, I saw that from one of the pictures. I'm like, oh my goodness, they're doing some work on that.
You guys are lucky that when they filmed that episode, which was, I think it was May, wasn't it? April.
It was April 16th.
Almost a year ago that they had not yet started the rehab.
Thank goodness.
yeah. Otherwise, it would have been a lot less dramatic, I guess. So what happened when you went inside?
Well, Corey found the gentleman, the ranger that was going to escort us, and we went in and opened the door. I took maybe 2 steps in at the most. And I honestly, my head was going to blow up, and I was almost sick. And, suddenly when you're hit with those feelings and stuff, you don't think. You're standing in a live lighthouse with a ginormous light, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, doing our investigations and different things, we go into it looking for every reason but the paranormal first. So I looked up and I asked the gentleman, I'm like, do you have like a junction box or something? Hello, what's going to run the light?
Yeah.
No more than like 3 feet from me was a door, and he opened it, and there was this ginormous junction box. I'm like, okay, that's got to be, it was the EMFs hitting me and just really getting to me. I'm like, okay. And the producer, Corey's like, are you okay? And I'm like, I will be. The further we get from this, the better. So we start heading up those windy stairs that get narrower as you go.
All the way to the top, baby.
No, I had to sit down. I literally at one point had to sit down because I was not feeling better. I started seeing black. It was not good. I'm like, this is really crazy. And I just sat there for a minute. And of course, they had to leave part of that in for the episode. I'm just ever so blessed. I sent him an email and thanked him so much for that.
Yeah. Well, reality TV.
The thing you don't want's always there.
Yeah, well, if I didn't give you the Jerry Springer talk, you know it now, right?
Right. Hey, good. She's gonna pass out. Let's get this on film. Maybe she'll fall down the stairs.
And then we'll have another ghost.
Woohoo! But it's like, okay, we got this. The pressure started relieving in my head, and we just kept going and going. I started feeling a different type of feeling with it. And I'm like, okay, was a human feeling to go along with that. The lighthouse keeper's actually a very strong individual. And by the time we got up there, he was standing there. And Corey could tell by the look on my face that, something was up. He's like, what's going on? And I said, he was there. And I told him, I said, it's very sad. The man is heavy of heart, even as a spirit. And he was like, well, because of his wife. And I said, He lived and is now dead, and he's listening to stories, had to listen to stories that he killed his wife, that she committed suicide, all these things for years. And I said, and it was neither of those. And he's like, it wasn't. And I said, no. I said, it was the wind. It took her and blew her right over.
To kind of reaffirm, you didn't have any knowledge about any lighthouse keeper or wife, any stories before this, did you?
Nothing. And I actually afterward, I tried to look it up, and I only do stuff on my phone. So, you never get anything. I really could not find anything. So what little I have gotten has been because of the show and such. And it's like I had been standing there and I saw this poor woman go, poof, bye. Yeah, those winds are nasty. Even that day, it's like we were having a hard time standing up. The place is fully fenced now. Now, can you imagine you're out there in these winds with your dog? There's only partial whatevers here and there. There's nothing to save you.
Interesting. Would you like me to fill in some of the gaps as far as the historic knowledge goes?
Please do. I would love it.
The lighthouse was completed in the late 1890s, and the first lighthouse keeper moved in, and he was married, and he and his wife were there for almost, if not a little over 2 decades, living there in the head keeper's cottage. And there were 2 other families, 2 assistant keepers. And they were both quite young when they were married, and they grew old or older there at the lighthouse. At a certain point, the keeper's wife was what we would call severely depressed, and he picked her up at the hospital and took her back to the cottage. And she wrote a note that some people believe is a suicide note. Other people think it is evidence that she did not commit suicide. She discussed some details about her previous behavior and her lack of energy and her sadness, and finished the note by saying, "I'm going to do better now. The day, was it tomorrow is the next day of my life," kind of a statement.
That sounds like a positive thing to me.
Yeah. And then she went out the next morning very, very early, and she was walking her dog, and dog came back to Lighthouse without her, and they went looking for her, but they looked over the edge of the cliffs. And since you've been there, yeah, those when you say promontory, and they didn't see her at first, and then one of the assistant keepers, they lowered him on a rope, and he found her body down below the lighthouse somewhere. Nobody knows for sure where she went off. Or
was she wearing white?
I don't know that, but it's interesting. You also picked up on a dog, because that was what she was doing when she went over.
That makes me sad, because the dog saw it. I'm not the biggest animal person. I'm a little person, but the poor dog saw this and could not say anything.
So you got those impressions as well.
Oh, I got some crazy impressions, just some unbelievable ones. And, it's one of those crazy things. I promised the lighthouse keeper that we would come back and try to help him. But, you can't at that point in time. There's a show going on, like he understands that. But bless his heart, I just feel so bad for him having to put up with all that stuff for years. Still.
Yes. It's
over 100 years. He gets to be there and listen to people. Oh, his wife committed suicide. Oh, are you sure he didn't? The things that people say. And here you are, this spirit going, no, this is not what happened. We are not privy to their conversations leading up to this. But I felt her in the house as a residual. And Corey had it on film. There were two windows that she liked to look out. And there were times she was, very sad by it. I mean, you're kind of having solitude there. We didn't have televisions. We didn't have radios, not a whole lot of anything out there. But she is residually there. She's crossed. She's happy. She's okay. Just because she wrote these words and somebody is viewing it as a negative does not mean that's what it was, I mean, she's trying to get her feelings out, which was probably something she learned when she was in Astoria. Get your feelings out.
Right.
Write them down, get them out of there, lighten your load. And she wasn't expecting that. It's just the weather is so not wonderful. And I even said to Corey that day, I said, I am thanking God that there are fences around this today, because it was so nasty up there. But one of the other things that I've seen, he and I were out there, and all of a sudden, and I knew nothing about this. I didn't know the name of that cove. I knew nothing. All of a sudden, and it was just heartbreaking to me. I saw all these people in the water, some trying to climb rocks to get out of the water, some trying to climb, and the water's pulling them out again. And I just grabbed the fence, and he was like, "What are you seeing?" And I told him, I'm like, "That's just awful. It has to have been hundreds of boats because there were hundreds of people."
Of course, the nickname of that stretch of land of the coast is the graveyard of ships.
Yep.
And hundreds of ships have been lost, and along with that is a couple thousand lives. Part of the other background that they didn't give to you was about the, I think it is called Dead Man's Cove, where...
I found that out. Zach told me after the fact that I almost fell over. I'm like, oh.
Yeah, that ships crashing or going aground, even with the two lighthouses. North Head Lighthouse is at the north end of Cape Disappointment, and the Cape Disappointment Lighthouse is at the southern end. They're only a couple miles apart, but they had to be there because as the ships would come in from the north, they couldn't see the South Lighthouse. That's why they built the northern one. But the current around that area has this tendency to hug the shore, and so a lot of these shipwrecks, the wrecks themselves and the bodies would wash up at Dead Man's Cove.
Yeah, you should have seen what I was seeing. And it was hard to see that. I'm like, oh, that's just awful. All those poor people. Then I was overcome with like this sense of emptiness and sadness afterwards. It's like, oh, okay, I got to keep it together. And I shed a few tears. Luckily, they didn't put that on there, thankfully. But that's a hard thing to see. You're seeing, even though it's not actually happening right at that moment, you're still seeing the demise of all these poor people.
As well as the ones who go to bring the bodies in and do the salvage. And oftentimes they're the family members going out to collect their relatives who've died.
And that's so difficult. It was pulling them out. I don't know how the ocean works, but one would think that there are an awful lot of scattered bones out there.
Yes. The day that we were having this filming on the beach, normally the sand color, this part of the Pacific is kind of a yellowish white sand.
Mm-hmm.
And when we were filming, it is almost prophetic or some kind of harbinger of doom. The sand was all black with shiny silicates. Yeah. And that was one of the things Zach had brought out is we're filming because we almost got caught by the riptide, and people from further south in California don't know about the riptide. Don't turn your back on the tide, even if the wave's only a foot high. Get you. Yeah, knocking people down and carrying them out to sea. So he did get knocked over by one of these waves, and looking at the sand. And after we filmed, I caught a hold of one of the park rangers, and I said, "This isn't the normal sand color." He said, "No, this particular storm that's hit this portion of the ocean or the beach was so churning that it actually brought up buried sands that had been under several feet of other sands and sediments, as opposed to the normal silicate, the yellowish white sands."
So it was kind of giving you a little bit of history itself. Here you go.
Yep. Showing up just at the right time, right after that bad storm. Now,
exactly.
When you were there, was he still on his camera phone, or had they given him a portable camera?
No, he was still on his phone until we went to the lighthouse keeper's home. And then we took a little bit of time. He's like, "You've got to be freezing. You've been out here forever." So we went in and sat and talked for a little bit and warmed up. We did go through there, and that's when I told him, this is where I saw her looking out of here. And he's like, "Do you have any idea what her feelings were?" And I said, like almost anybody at that point in time who would have been stuck there, there's not a whole lot to do, so she's just watching out there and just dealing with whatever. Yeah, you could feel mostly the loneliness in her. So we just kind of sat down and waited probably 10-15 minutes, and all of a sudden it was the funniest thing. There was a knock on the door, and he went to answer it, and it was the opposite door that we came in. Freaked him out because nobody was there.
Interesting.
He goes, "Nobody's there," and I'm like, "Corey, they're at the back door." "There's no back door." "Yeah, there is. There's a back door." So I went and I'm like, "Hi, here's everybody standing at the opposite end of the house." It was really pretty funny. And so they came in, and if I recall right, we went out so that they could start getting ready to do the inside shot, which is where I sat down and spoke with Zach. And so I came down and spent a little bit of time with you.
Mm-hmm.
We asked, why were they putting up black plastic, found out that that's the only way that they could keep the excess light out.
Yeah.
And, I found that pretty interesting. And you having stayed in that house, you know how big the living area and the dining room are.
Yes.
That's where we were.
Yeah, and it's for those of you who I hope have a chance to visit there or visit the website from the state of Washington where they do have some photographs. The Lighthouse service did all right by the keepers in that they knew these folk are going to be there isolated from everybody else. We might as well make them as comfortable as possible. Otherwise, they'll go crazy and then they'll quit. I think the quitting worried the Lighthouse service more than the going crazy part, but they were trying.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, beautiful building inside and out. And the keeper's cottage has 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, but a substantial dining room, nice kitchen, front porch and back porch entry. I think we paid $300 or so for the entire weekend. We were off season. I think when you guys filmed, it was still off season in April. It was less than $400.
That's really, I so wanted to go with you guys, but I unfortunately couldn't.
There may be next time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, see, it's kind of L-shaped in there because the dining room has 2 entrances. One entrance goes into the living area, so it's kind of an L-shaped area. And it kind of cracked me up because when they put all their lights and they had this one sliding camera that was on the floor and all these different things, that room became very small.
Yeah.
And then all the guys were in the adjoining living area. I can't remember. There had to be like close to a dozen people in that little area.
Yeah.
And yeah, when we sat down to talk, you wouldn't have known anybody else was there. I mean, you couldn't even hear these guys breathing. It was just pretty incredible. And they were all on it. Zach was very hands-on with setting things up, wanting to make sure, he's like, are you okay there? The light's kind of bright. I can't see anything but light now. I have gone blind. Thank you. So, yeah, they did their best to adjust things. And what was really interesting is when we saw it on TV, it still seemed very dark.
Uh-huh.
But there were 2 big sets of lights in there.
I was in there not when the lights were not on. I went inside just before I left. I think you were still there an hour or 2 after I left, if I recall.
I honestly can't remember because by the time we were done, I was
exhausted.
Wiped out.
Yeah.
Like, I'm beat. I want to go.
Yeah, I felt the same way too.
I bet because you were there earlier than I was.
Yeah, and yeah, I'm chuckling because again, trying to mentally want to take care of you in the next episode too. I asked permission to stick around. Normally on these kind of TV shows, you show up, you do your part, and you shake hands, and then you go home.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to stick around, and it's at that point in the filming period when you were wandering around and finally Zach and Aaron and the rest of us came up, and I said, can I walk around too? And they said, sure. And so you're ahead of us with your producer with the camera, and it was so funny because I thought I was doing okay, but then all of a sudden, Jeff, and this was Zach whispering loudly to me, Jeff, you're going to be in the shot, get back.
Oh no.
Yeah. And they had somebody there the day you were there. He had looked kind of like your friendly neighborhood biker, blonde haired guy with his hair kind of combed back in a 1950s style. And he was kind of managing the food and some other production assistant stuff. Later, they shaved his head and started calling him Bacon or something like that. I'm not sure.
What?
There are things about this show maybe I shouldn't know. Anyway, I decided, well, let me follow this guy around and chat with him because he knows what's going on, and so I won't get into trouble. And I'll be concerned if he and I were walking and talking. We were coming back from the lighthouse to the keeper's cottage, and then we came back out. There's a really nice path to and from, and close to the keeper's cottages is a wide open grassy spot. But once you start toward the lighthouse, there are these bushes overhanging, and it gets very narrow because of the bushes. And so he and I came out of the bushes into the open spot, not too far from the lighthouse keeper's cottages, and there we were in shot.
Oh, again.
Yeah, there I am, rookie Jeff. I've been on this many television shows, and yet I'm still getting in the way. That was.
You never know for sure where they're going to be.
Yeah.
We came out, we had our conversation, and it was really kind of humorous because, I mean, you know how my brain works.
It works?
Chronic migraines.
Oh.
And when it's not even negative, it can be a very strong person, such as this lighthouse keeper. His feelings were so strong, and he was standing there with his hand on me, squeezing my neck, my shoulder, I should say. And I hadn't even realized it until I saw the episode. I'm sitting there rubbing my shoulder, trying to not make a scene. But it's like I felt like turning around saying, "Get off of me."
Yeah, had you made a scene, it sure would have made it in the episode, wouldn't it?
Oh, yeah. I'm sure, Come on, dude, we're going to fight. Stop touching me. You're pissing me off here. But I just tried to be calm with it. And it's like, he was not happy. He wanted me to know he was not happy. I'm sitting there trying to have this professional conversation with the host. And here's this unseen to these other people holding on to me. And I'm like, oh, this is just great. Thanks a lot. Just go. And so we got up to go outside because if I recall right, he wanted to do an outside shot. I can't remember for sure. And we were talking, he wanted to know, was this guy negative? And I said, no, but he's frustrated. He is angry. He just doesn't want to be here anymore. And so cameras are off and we go outside. And I think you saw this. He and I got pushed.
Yeah, I remember that.
Cameras were on at that point. All of a sudden, and I didn't even know it, the cameras went back on. I didn't know that the cameras had gone back in, and Zach had sent Aaron in with a piece of equipment to see if they could pick anything up. And he stopped me from falling. Here we both are. And he asked if I was okay. And yeah. And he's like, what happened? And I'm like, he's letting us know he is not happy with us. He feels like we're ignoring him, and he pretty much felt that way. And so they got some of whatever it was on film during that point. And I was quite surprised when I saw it later. And our friend Jill got a still of it, and it looks like I'm fighting with Zach, which I was not. There was nothing going on like that.
What, he wasn't trying to kiss you?
Ew, no. Bad boy. We were just discussing this, like, why did this happen? Because I think he really likes to get different people's opinions and takes on things, which to me is a very intelligent thing because we all have our own points of view. And so I told him, take care of yourself. Well, I am, and I said, well, you need to be careful with your back. You need to take more time off. And he just kind of looked at me really strangely.
Did you know that he had back surgery a few days before?
I had not. And he even said, I recently had back surgery, and I just kind of looked at him and I'm like, you need to be taking care of it. Uh-huh. I know. You're right. And I said, you're not going to listen to me. And he just kind of looked at me and smiled, so we walked and we were going to go down to the lighthouse. But by that point in time, he was really sore and you could see it. He'd done a lot of walking. So we did the rest of our part out on that very walkway you were discussing. And at the end of it, they wanted what they called a beauty shot. And I cracked up and I looked at him and I said, really, you asked the wrong person. I had been in the rain all day. You're not going to get a beauty shot from this girl. I thought he was going to fall over at that point. So they're like, okay, look at the ground and look seriously. And I'd look at the ground and start to look up and I'd see he's standing there trying not to laugh. And I'm like, this is not going to work, you guys. Because we're all laughing, at that point. Somehow we got through it. But it was such a really, really neat experience. They were all very kind, gentlemen, professional. It was just really neat because remember that song from the 80s, Rumors?
Yeah.
It fits this show very well. There are 10 million rumors, and I really didn't see any of them. None of them were jerks.
Uh-huh.
None of them were rude. None of them were impolite. I embarrassingly asked Zach if I could have a photo done with him because Heather, my daughter, is the one that had gotten me started watching this show back in 2008 or 9 or something, and she wasn't there. And so I'm like, okay. He was very polite and accommodating, and I apologized. I said, I feel very embarrassed. I said, but being she's not here, I would really love to send this to her. Not a problem. So, you hear all these things about these people, and everybody has good and bad days. I don't care who you are. If you make $1 million an hour or $10 an hour, we all have the same emotions. So he may have off days, just like everybody else. He has pain. He has gone into places that have caused him health issues. He doesn't have to smile all day, every day. That doesn't make him a bad person. He's very professional and dedicated with what he's doing in front of and behind that camera is what I found.
I agree with you. I was very, very impressed watching him as I don't know if the title would be director of photography, but every single shot, establishing shot, and kind of the setting the stage kind of shots to give you the architecture and this. It was all Zach's eye, and I was impressed by that
very
too.
artistic.
So I was impressed as well. And I'm glad you came out of this with it as a positive experience, because let's face it, part of the reason you're mentioning all this good stuff is because the internet seems to only promote, oh, so-and-so was a jerk, so-and-so, it's all phony. And that's not always true. Yeah.
That just really bothered me after, probably you also, they had a room set aside at the hotel in case things went long and everything. They were very willing to let me take advantage of that because they knew by that point in time I was beat. I had opened up completely. I hadn't slept the night before. It was like a 4-hour drive from my house there. But I was not going to take advantage of that. To me, I'm like, I can make it home. It's not like it's 10 o'clock at night. I was not willing to just, hey, they're paying for it, so I'm going to do it. It's a respect thing. I'm going to be respectful to them. And even if they hadn't been, I'm still not going to be demeaning or rude because, let's face it, because of you and another person, I was there. And if I was a jerk, it would have reflected on you. And I was not going to do that.
Well, I appreciate that. I guess America needs more of that, people thinking of other people or the effects, the reverberations or the ripples in the pond of some of our actions. That's an ideal kind of state, though. We're all, as you pointed out, we all have bad days, but it's something to strive for.
Yeah, if we think about each other, let's not be mean to each other. Let's listen honestly. Let's not assume things about people. Let's not be jerks. It's just pretty common sense, but like everybody said, common sense is not common anymore.
Yeah.
Like when I had that incident and I was so dizzy and just felt so icky, my thought was, oh my gosh, I can't get sick. Oh, this would be so embarrassing. Oh, this would be embarrassing for Jeff. I can't do that was going through my head. I'm going to embarrass Jeff.
Well, yeah, leave that to me. Leave it to the professionals. I can embarrass myself.
You didn't need somebody coming out. Yeah, she threw her guts up in the middle of the whole place. Yeah, I'm so glad I suggested she be on the show.
Well, I probably would have said something like, wow, imagine the production value of that. Make sure that it's in Technicolor.
No. It was bad enough seeing myself look the way I did. I'm like, oh, that's just not good.
Yeah, usually you're, to use the old expression, fairly well turned out.
I try, especially in a situation like this, and I had left my makeup bag at home because I'd run out of the door so worried I was going to be late. It was sitting at the top of the stairs. I'm like, oh, garbage. I couldn't brush my hair. I couldn't put more makeup on so they got stuck with what they got stuck with.
Well, it's interesting. One of our mutual friends or acquaintances, he's a friend of mine. I think you've met Ross Allison up in the Seattle area. He has a ghost walk around Pioneer Square. Yeah. I interviewed him, and he's working on his own television show concept. And some time ago on Facebook, he posted a series of photos saying, which one of these do you think I should use as my signature look for the show? The only thing I can think of is, man, pick something kind of mainstream. Don't pick something extreme, because that will be your look for the rest of the show. And Zach is kind of in that hampering mode too.
Exactly. He's got to, have his little spiky hair and all these different things. And come on, we have the right to change. People don't want us to, but we need to change.
Yeah.
Would be my luck that somebody would put the picture of me sitting on the stairs with my head in my hand next to my name.
Yeah, or you'll be in the credits for the next 5 years.
Exactly. It's like, no, that's not the whole thing. That was just a few minutes.
Yeah, or the only picture of you on Google Images is you're picking your nose, or you've got your finger in your ear, you're cleaning out your ear, and that's the shot.
We had a viewing. I watched it there, and then I did watch it the next day with family members who didn't make it, because I find it very hard and actually egotistical. I can't just sit there and watch myself, and I can't stand listening to my own voice.
Yeah.
So it's hard to do that. And so the picture that pops up on the internet, and I'm like, oh God, what picture is popping up on the internet? And it was actually one of me sitting in there talking to Zach with this very serious look. I was mid-sentence, and I'm like, well, it's better than me sitting there with my head in my hands.
Yep. Most of the photos of me, I'm standing somewhere like they're taking on one of my Ghost Walker tours. So I have one arm out, finger
And your
pointing
mouth
up
open.
into the, yeah, my mouth open. When we had this recent Lighthouse getaway, we all posed for several photos, and it was interesting that a couple people said, "Oh my God, Jeff is actually smiling in this picture." You know, my mouth is shut too.
You smile a lot. It's just that when you're doing your walks, you are conveying stories. You are telling stories. You can't just stand there with a smile on your face.
And psychically broadcast the story to everybody. Sadly not.
Yeah, that's not going to work.
Yeah.
It won't work.
Well, hey, we have talked quite a bit, and we should start winding down. And I want to get a couple things, if you have a couple more minutes, is any final impressions about the show, as well as how people can find you on the internet, and certainly not live, because we don't approve of stalkers on my show.
Yeah, I've had a few of those, and they weren't my favorite. Let's see. Last impressions. I'd do it again in a heartbeat. I didn't have any problem with the way it turned out, because I knew that after all those hours of filming between, all the cameras and the producer's cell phone, I knew there was going to be a mound in the middle of the floor, and they had to sit there and say, what are we going to keep?
Mm-hmm.
People ask me questions. Well, why'd you say this? Well, the answer is somewhere buried somewhere.
In the other 20 hours.
Exactly, because it may have been 4 or however many hours that I filmed with them, but how many cameras? So, that's a lot of stuff. I like the fact that they let me...
Okay, put the phone closer to your face. Put the phone closer to your face.
Oh, sorry. I like that they let me be honest about it. They didn't want me to be all dramatic and come up with fake crap. I appreciated that. Because it wouldn't happen.
I do too when I'm on these shows, yeah.
That's my final takeaway from it. I appreciated it. It was a once-in-a-lifetime experience, and I'm really excited that I got to do that, and I appreciate it once again. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure.
And people can find, I'm on Instagram as well as Facebook, and there is also ghostandgirls.com, which is the group that June and I are part of. We have Ghosts and Girls International because we have a group over in London. We do a lot of negative situations that a lot of people don't always like to handle, but we also do the others. So you can find ghostandgirls.com. We have a YouTube channel, and let's see, Instagram is also Ghost and Girls, and same on Facebook. So we're just easy to find. You just put it in there. You can put my name in, Wendy Stanton Phillips, and I should pop up somewhere.
Okay, great. If you want more information and maybe some photos, not of me and Zach. I waited too long and didn't get any photos. But if you're interested in more photos of the North Head Lighthouse in that area or information, please visit my website, www.ghostsandcritters.com, and you should find a button somewhere that says podcasts, and it'll be in the March podcast section. All right, Wendy, I so appreciate you taking the time behind the scenes.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Behind the scenes, it took us like 20 minutes to get all the sound checks right. So I hope you enjoy this broadcast and that is clear. And there'll be kind of an epilogue, but I thank you all for tuning in and look forward to entertaining you soon. So goodbye, Wendy.
Bye. You have a great one.
You too, and goodbye, everybody else. Our theme music has been Dance Macabre by Camille Saint-Saëns, performed by Kevin MacLeod, www.incompetech.com, licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0. Thank you for listening to The Peculiar World here on the Paranormal UK Radio Network.